there's a lot of types of stuff that you can try to track here. Understanding why you're doing it is helpful. So the first might be that your real goal is to really understand lineage. So, and that you are, most of this is really about saying, I have a piece of data that I'm looking at here, and I want to understand where it came from and how it got here and how it was calculated. So tracing that back to the source with the details for clarity, transparency, quality, consistency, whatever you're trying to understand are the reasons why you're trying to understand the source. And that might just be not just one step, it might be multiple steps back, right? All the way back to where it originally came into your organization or was doing the data entry or imported from some other place. A lot of times when people talk about lineage, they're talking about tracing things back to try to understand that. Now, I might be trying to understand that from a developer standpoint because I really need to do this, or maybe from a usage standpoint. The next reason you might be doing this is that you want to sort of create an inventory of all the sort of custom or managed integration processes that your organization is either in charge of or has built themselves. So, you know, many organizations say we've got hundreds, if not thousands, of integrations and data feeds and processes that are connecting all of our data between one thing and another, and you know, we kind of lost grip of what they are, and you know, we don't know about how to support them or maintain them or improve them until something breaks, and we really need to get a grip on that. And so just being able to inventory and understand what those things are in order to do maintenance and support and enhancements. So you can decide what level of detail you want to have, but the first level is just understanding what they are, right? And maybe understanding from the system to system, or maybe down to entity may be sufficient to handle this. But this is actually where it's important to actually inventory things, meaning that you want to know about how they exist, even if you don't have a full curated knowledge of what it does. Just knowing that it exists and is running is very useful for this purpose. The other reason you might want to do this is we often hear from organizations that are saying, hey, I'm moving from this CRM to this CRM, or this ERP to this ERP, or this changing my integration stack or whatever, and they need to rewrite or replicate all of the systems, all those integrations between those two systems. So they need to understand what was there so they can build new ones. Or as we kind of talk a little bit about down here later, is that sometimes people are moving data centers, or they're doing a cloud migration, and they know that many of their integrations, particularly the ones that are physically sending the data somewhere else through the network or whatever, they need to go and make sure that all of those are changed so that they have a new IP address destination or something else that they're actually able to hit that system, and that they actually know how to test and validate that when they move data systems, that all those integrations are pointing to the right place now and are going to continue to work. And so doing that inventory is really helpful from this maintenance and support. The other reason that you might be doing this is for sort of a policy attribution and management. So you have security policies, privacy policies, data sharing policies, access rules, data retention rules, all these types of things that you're developing in your organization, and you want to know, where is our data going, and where, when our data leaves this place, or how is our data moving, who has access to this data. And sometimes it's very difficult to tell. You've got these hundreds of integrations flowing, or data feeding to a bunch of different places, and you kind of lose grip of either like what's in that data feed and what happens once people get that. And so being able to understand what all those data flows are, and then try to put or attribute various policy rules against that. Oh, this includes this types of privacy data, so this is how people must treat that, or this is the new policies or actions people need to take around that. Or maybe you could say, hey, we're not going to do that anymore. So being able to document the relevant policies towards all the data that you have moving, and to help drive decisions as you create new ones. Additionally, you might not just be interested in understanding a single point-to-point integration, right? You might want to understand how all the pieces fit together in a overall sort of end-to-end architecture. So maybe you want to confirm, like I was saying, this cloud migration, you want to confirm that everything can reach where it needs to go when you change a piece. Or maybe you're trying to track and manage data that's going from point to point to point, and understand its deeper lineage, or what's the downstream impact of making this change that you might not know. So thinking about how all these things fit together is another reason. All right, so outside of tracking your own things, the other things you develop, another thing you might be interested in doing is inventorying or creating documentation of vendor-provided APIs or import-export tools. So you've purchased some large human resources system, and they have outside of maybe understanding how to query the database and things like that, or maybe you've got something like Workday that doesn't let you query the database directly. Now the question is, well, how do we get data in and out from an API standpoint or an integration standpoint? Or they might have tools that you can run that do snapshots or images or data dumps out to another system, and you want to understand what that is. So being able to link to or point to or ingest these vendor-provided API or integration points so that your developers or anyone who needs to do that can build against that and understand how to interact with that system. And in some cases, how that system is transforming the data. To be fair, this is a great weakness in a lot of vendors who provide API documentation or import-export documentations, is they're rarely providing you the underlying transformations that are happening. So you might pull the data out and say, well, why did I only get 100 records when I thought there was 1,000? And you don't realize that, oh, it's only pulling like, the last 60 days worth of data or something that's not documented. But, as much as you can get that, it's helpful from vendor documentation. Now, the next thing you might want to do here is sort of what we call advanced curation. Now, this is falling a little bit into what we talked about before, policies, but you really want to document the, outside of inventorying these things, you want to say, all right, well, now I know about these now, what's the purpose of this? What's the glossary definitions of the things on it, so that I know that the customer satisfaction score that I've got coming out of this particular data dump is the same as the customer satisfaction score I have coming out of this other one. And does it mean the same thing, or are we calculating this differently? Maybe you want to understand the status of this, and usability rating, which is a feature that we talk about, which is documenting sort of, is this a good thing? Should you use it or not? Is it trusted? Those types of things. What functional domain or area it falls into, like, this is HR, finance, the policies as we mentioned, and also some context. Is this, this is only current data, or this is just, one region or something, that might not be obvious from just looking at the code or the process. And then the last reason for this is that maybe you want to use this repository to manage requests for documenting new or changed data flow. So if someone's going to come along and say, I want a new, I need a new extract to do X, Y, and Z. I need a new API to do X, Y, and Z. I need a new process to interface with this existing API. Or the extract that we have right now we need to add a field or change a format or whatever. So managing that and updating a specification to document that from the upfront catalog. So we talked about that with reports, and the same thing here is that a specification and documentation in your catalog of a process, be a report process or a data flow process, doesn't have to be a documentation of something that's existing. You can document something to be built, and those are essentially identical sets of information. Until the main difference is that this is a specifications and requirements for something to be built, as opposed to curated documentation of something that is built. And then once that's created, that the specification is fed to the developer or whatever to build it, they can come back and sort of update it and make sure that it's pointing to the actual real process. And the beautiful thing about doing that is that in the standard process that everyone's doing right now of getting something developed, particularly if they're not doing it themselves, or they're asking someone else to do it, is that they're should be having some process or dialogue of what's the purpose of this, why are we doing it, what is it supposed to include, is this right, of building a requirement specification document for it. That is the curation activity, where you get the purpose, the glossary, the usability, the domains, the policies. You can, if that work is happening right now, it's typically though not getting captured. So if you can capture that as you build new things, you never have to look back to document these things. The other kind of request is that you might have something that's inventoried or not inventoried, but it's not yet curated. You might have a request to go in and actually add this sort of advanced curation information. So reasons for data flow playbook. So what's the point of this? So you want to think about, why are you trying to do this? Are you trying to understand the lineage, to trace things all the way back and really see the details? Are you trying to inventory the systems primarily for knowing about their existence and giving you some advantage to be able to maintain and support or rewrite those? Are you trying to understand things for a policy attribution and management level and what type of policies you're trying to track on those? Are you trying to understand the overall architecture and how the pieces fit together and run in dependency? Are you trying to document the vendors stuff so that you can better, so that you have easier access and visibility into available import-export tools and APIs? Are you trying to really build a deep understanding of the quality and definitions of that? The advantage of advanced curation is really, if there is this sort of lack of trust in this APIs, and we don't know which ones are working or not, and it's kind of frozen you. So having sort of certified and signed off on and agreed upon definitions that can help solve those problems. That might not be important to you, right? You might only be focused on, I just need to know where everything is, so that if there's a problem, I can fix it. And then if managing requests are important. So think about that as we think about the effort that you need to do.